Valentine's bouquets come in all shapes and prices, but how do you know which one's best when there's so many out there to choose from? Well, it's simple. 1-800-Flowers.com is your Valentine's go-to. Right now, when you order early, you can get 24 multicolored roses for only $29.99. Or upgrade to 24 romantic red roses for only $10 more. It's an unbelievable Valentine's offer from 1-800-Flowers. 24 multicolored roses for just $29.99. Or upgrade to red roses for only $10 more. Roses from 1-800-Flowers are picked at their peak, shipped overnight to ensure freshness and her amazement. 24 multicolored roses for only $29.99 or an upgrade to 24 red roses for just $10 more is the perfect reward for thinking ahead. Look, make sure you lock in this offer. It's only good while supplies last. To order 24 multicolored roses for $29.99 or upgrade to 24 red roses for only $10 more, go to 1-800-Flowers.com, click on the radio icon, and enter the code WINGO. That's 1-800-Flowers.com and enter code WINGO. Order today at 1-800-Flowers.com, code WINGO.
Attention shoppers, clean up on aisle 14. Clean up on aisle 14. Someone dropped a jar of pickles. Kosher pickles.
Beatboxing at a big box store. Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
A red minivan has the lights on in the parking lot.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Geico.
This is the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
You guys both know this, and I've come to appreciate this from covering the NFL all these years. It is hard to play in the NFL and play for 16 games. It is harder to do it for multiple years, and it is hard as hell to do it and finally have a chance to look at that little shiny silver thing called the Lombardi Trophy and realize, oh my God, this actually happened. Now, it's a little harder everywhere except New England because they tend to be there all the time. But the point is, to get there and get to that mountaintop, it gives you a lot of pause. It gives you a reflection, like all the things that you had to do to get to this spot. And, you know, it can be life-changing, but it can also be life-affirming. And I don't think there was anybody whose post-game comments sort of summed that up any better than Eagles Center Jason Kelce. And this is what he said after he realized, my God, I've finally done it.
I found myself in the shower crying, dreaming of this moment. You've worked so hard your whole life to get here. Everything culminates. And I can't help but think back to a quote my grandfather gave me from Calvin Coolidge about persistence. I'm not going to say it because it's a little long and it'll drag home, but you know, he gave me that quote when I was 18 years old, when I was not given a scholarship to play at any Division I university. My father and mother told me to stay after my dream. And I've officially accomplished the best thing in this sport with a group of guys who mean the world to me.
How awesome is that?
I mean, that's it, man. That's it. That's the whole deal.
That's it right there.
That's the whole deal.
The amazing thing is, when I heard him saying that, I could have envisioned you saying something like that if you guys had won the title, the national championship, saying something kind of right along those lines on what it would mean you got that close to it.
Yeah, well, and I mean, that's it's whatever your level of accomplishment is along the way. Like, I think we all have different things that mean that much to us. I mean, God, I can remember the first game I played meaningful snaps, and I found you after the game. It was basically sobbing on the field because at that point I had been a career backup. It had taken so long to get to that point of staying ready and never knowing if your opportunity was going to come. And so when you finally get there and get to taste something that had been the mountaintop for you for so long, and that mountaintop changes and moves as you go along in your career and as you go through different things, that moment for me had that sort of catharsis to it, to where I was overcome by it. And then you quickly adjust and you find new mountaintops. But for this is truly the pinnacle of the sport. This is the highest that it gets. And so I think everyone in those moments, we saw it with Randy Moss when he got the Hall of Fame announcement. Everyone in those moments, I think, realizes not what that accomplishment means to you, but like Jason just said, what everything else you had to put into it means to you, what it looked like when this looked like it was never going to happen or never be a possibility.
Kind of the journey, right?
Yeah.
You got to it, but then it's the journey. You start reflecting on the road it took to get there and all the bumps and curves and peaks and valleys along the way.
Well, that's the thing, and this is why I love football more than any other sport, and obviously I'm pretty sure you guys feel the same way. It's a thing that is shared more, I think, than any other big-time sport, because it has to be something that you do together. We always talk about quarterbacks' wins and losses as not being a stat. Here's why. Tom Brady threw for 500 freaking yards. He threw for 500 yards and 3 touchdowns and no interceptions, and the team lost. It's a team thing. It's something that's shared with somebody, and that's what makes it so great. And for those that don't have it, here's the entire Calvin Coolidge quote, who was the 30th president of the United States. Quote, "Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan, 'Press on,' has solved and will always solve the problems of the human race." That's freaking money, man.
Yeah, it is.
That's money. And that's what it's about. I mean, that's the whole deal. You don't need a special skill to work hard. You don't need a special skill to try your best. All that takes is you finding out what you have in you and putting it out there on the line. And you're going to fail 100 times. But that 101st time, you're going to knock down that door. And that's where Kelce is right now. That's where the Eagles are right now. That's the beauty of this.
Yeah.
The whole thing is about trying. It's not about succeeding. It's about trying. And then when you get to that successful spot, you realize, holy hell, all we had to do was try harder, and it works. Yeah, that's the beauty of it all.
Everybody's road is different. There are the stars right out of the gate, the first-round picks. There are the guys then like Jason Kelce who doesn't get offers to go anywhere. There are guys like you who have to wait a few years to start, and you just keep going and going. I mean, to go into practice and to lifting every day waiting for that moment. And it took me a couple of years the same way to start at Notre Dame. You just keep fighting and fighting and fighting. And so for everybody, they have a different story, whether it's injuries, the guys playing in front of them, to where you just persevere. And then, man, that's why I always get so jealous of those guys, jealous of you and Jake when you guys are playing in the championship game, because I never even got to do that, of saying you guys have a chance to finish it off, to hit the mountaintop and to realize everything that you put into it comes to fruition on one night.
Well, and I think the best part about this is that the effort and persistence doesn't guarantee you a result, but it guarantees the way that people will perceive you. The worst thing that you can say about someone is, oh, well, you're a genius. Oh, you're this unbelievable talent, because that requires no skill on your part.
Or hard work at times.
That requires really nothing other than you showing up and being what you were naturally given. The key and the way that you would like to hopefully be remembered is someone that took those things and harnessed them, that made the best out of them, and that showed daily. And that's what that persistence is, and that's why those guys all seem to go back to the moments where they thought this would never be possible. Forget the bumps along the way. I mean, Jason Kelce went right back to the most painful moment of that possible, where he wasn't offered, where people were told him, we don't want you.
At 18, your dream was over, he was told.
Exactly. You have done. That crushed there. And so that's the moment that you tend to go back to, because from then on out, this result wasn't promised, but his legacy was already cemented. The person that we'll remember Jason Kelce for, that his teammates will remember him for, was already well entrenched in all of their minds.
Yeah. Effort. It's about be willing to put yourself out there for something you believe in, and to see it pay off like that is just remarkable. And you're right, Junior. At 18, he was told it was never going to happen for him.
Done.
And he's like, you know what? I don't believe that. I'm going to keep going. Persistence. I'm going to freaking have this. If I ever get a tattoo, it's going to be this quote. I'm going to put it somewhere. We'll figure out where I should put it.
I got a guy for you.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about that.
I know where we can put it, too.
There you go. Thanks very much. Hey, I love you guys.
Golic and Wingo,
The podcast.
Mm-hmm. Trey Wingo and Mike Golic Sr. ESPN's Mike Reiss joining us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. And Mike, it's somewhat prophetic that we talk about making the switch in that read into you, because that's exactly what a lot of people are wondering. The hell happened on Super Bowl Sunday when they made the switch, Mike, to not play Malcolm Butler one defensive snap A guy who played 98% of the defensive snaps in the regular season, and then you see Nick Foles throw for 370 plus and 3 touchdowns. What happened? What more can you tell us about why Malcolm Butler was not on the field except for 1 punt coverage?
Yeah, I'm still digging on, the answer to the question. What I can tell you is that when we caught up with Malcolm Butler after the game, and I was there with Adam Schefter, as Malcolm Butler made this long walk from the locker room to the team buses, and you could just see it in his face, the emotion, the hurt, as he made this long walk, and finally, he just sort of, at first didn't want to talk about anything, and then he just let it out. You remember what he said. He said, they gave up on me, and then he said, I could have changed that game. So he was hurt. He didn't know why he didn't play. He had speculated that, maybe he wasn't playing well or they didn't feel comfortable. But as he walked to the bus himself at Super Bowl Sunday after that game, he was at a loss to explain it himself. He didn't know.
I mean, listen, they're obvious. Nobody is buying this, right, Mike? Nobody's buying that they're just putting the best guy on the field that they think can win when this guy's played 98% of the snaps, which means he's played in a lot of different packages and sub-packages on defense. So isn't it just a matter of time? We're already hearing the reports that he missed curfew. In your dealing, let's just go with that for a second. In your dealings with that team or with Bill Belichick, we know if you don't show up to practice on time, even in a blizzard, just go home or don't even bother showing up. But would it be a situation if you miss curfew in a situation like that, he would just not play you in the game?
Yeah, I mean, that could be a plausible scenario. What I want to do is be fair to Malcolm Butler, because there's a lot of speculation out there, and, but not a lot of credible facts in terms of someone, putting their name on the record and saying this is what it is. I know that might be hard in this situation. It's probably a combination of a lot of factors. And, the one thing I would say from a football perspective, like if you want to look at what they did football-wise, it was a 2-corner game. I mean, I don't think they ran one play in the game with like their pure nickel package with 3 corners. So that's the first part of it. They went big nickel, so it was a lot of safeties in the game. So that played into it a little bit from a football perspective, but from a non-football perspective, your instincts tell you something had to have happened. He arrived at the Super Bowl 1 day later than the team. He had an illness. He said he went to the hospital. One question I have as a reporter, was that late arrival excused? We don't know that. We're taking Malcolm Butler's word for that right now. So I'm digging on that to see if maybe that had a factor in the decision. Was there anything else during Super Bowl week that happened that led to this decision? When did players find out? I'm hearing a lot of conflicting stories on that, and so it's sort of hard here to get to the truth right now. Some more time needed.
All right, we'll let you keep digging. Mike Reiss with us, our Patriots reporter here. Mike, I guess an overall question with Butler before we move on to other topics is, have there been issues that you've heard of between him and the team in the past that would lead up to some sort of culmination point that maybe there was a straw that broke the camel's back?
Yeah, and it's a great question, Trey, because this is going back to 2014 now when he came in as an undrafted free agent out of West Alabama. And I wouldn't say that it's just issues. I think, Malcolm Butler has always sort of, put the team first in terms of his performance, and he represents a lot of what the team is all about. But behind the scenes, I would say, you have captains like a Devin McCourty and a Duron Harmon in that defensive backfield that are pretty steady on a day-to-day basis in terms of their showing up and they're going through everything that Bill Belichick asked for. I think other players sometimes they require a little extra attention in those type of areas, and maybe that would be something that category Malcolm Butler falls into. And just in terms of a day-to-day reliability, there might be a little more volatility there. That's not to say anything about the character of the player, what he represents. So maybe there were some things there with Malcolm Butler where it required a little more attention in terms of the details of what Bill Belichick asked for on a daily basis.
Well, to finish up on Malcolm Butler, and then we'll wait to hear if there's more info. You don't think there's any way he's an unrestricted free agent, so you think he's going to be gone?
Well, I asked him, Mike, after the game, and did you hear his response? He said, "I ain't Miss Cleo, so I can't tell the future." But it's hard for me to imagine that he would be back with the Patriots, that he would want to be back with the Patriots. I mean, you saw his emotion during the national anthem to not play in the Super Bowl on defense after, 4 years with the team here and everything. He sort of spilled his heart for the team. It's hard for me to imagine he would want to be back here.
There's so many more layers to this story that we hope we'll try and figure out what it is. But look, if there was some sort of discipline on one level, you have to sort of respect Bill for being able to pull that cord at the Super Bowl, and you could make an argument that it really cost the team. On the other hand, it's like, okay, it's about winning. It's all about winning, and we got one more game to try and win. Let's see if we can put our best people out there. We'll see what happens. We'll leave that one there, and Mike, we'll let you and other people try and see if we can figure out exactly what the reason's there. But there are some other things to talk about with this team, and we have the announcement that Matt Patricia is the new head coach of the Detroit Lions. Mike, is there any reason why we haven't heard that Josh McDaniels has been announced as the new head coach of the Colts yet?
I would say that's probably more just semantics, and that's coming, and no turning back now, unless there was something way out, in left field. But no, I would expect that to happen probably today, if not tomorrow. And the Patriots and McDaniels, as I understand it, Trey, are moving forward with that being the scenario that's unfolding here. And I don't believe that's really ever been in question, at least over the last week or so since he had that last meeting with Jim Irsay coming to town with Chris Ballard to meet with McDaniels personally. And I think once that happened, it was solidified and he was moving forward.
How about the rest of the coaches? Dante Scarnecchia, is he moving on? He came back to help this team. And then other assistants that may go with either Patricia or with Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike, because I'll tell you, Scarnecchia is the offensive line coach, and he's going to turn 70 on February 14th. So he's obviously close to the end here, and he actually had retired. He came back after 2 years away to coach, and he's a key guy for them. He talked at the Super Bowl about saying, I'm going to make a decision after the Super Bowl. I don't want to get into the future, but he sort of hinted that he would be open to coming back, and my sense would be that Bill Belichick, who Scarnecchia has great respect for, might lean on him a little bit and say, hey, can I get one more year out of you? I have a transition here on the offensive side with Josh McDaniels leaving. I might need you. So keeping an eye on that. Joe Judge, their special teams coordinator, we know how much Bill Belichick values special teams, is in the last year of his contract here, so he's sort of a free agent. We have to keep an eye on him because with McDaniels going to Indy, Patricia going to Detroit, there's going to be some options for him. So they could technically lose their top three coaches here if Joe Judge leaves as well.
Mike Reiss with us, our Patriots reporter. And along those lines, before we get to some other topics, just so people understand how significant it is to lose both your coordinators, maybe your O-line coach, and maybe a couple of other people. The last time, Mike, we saw the Patriots go through something like this significant in one off season, was after Super Bowl 39, ironically, also against the Eagles, where they lost Romeo Crennel, their defensive coordinator, and Charlie Weiss, their offensive coordinator, and it took them 10 years to win another Super Bowl. Now, obviously, they went to a couple and lost to the Giants, but it does take something out of you when you have so many people that you've been around for so long and suddenly they're all walking out the door, right?
No question. And then you look at how Bill Belichick's going to proceed, Trey, and one name that's sort of popping up here that we got to keep an eye on is Greg Schiano, who we know how close he is with him. And why I think this is important is that if Bill Belichick does bring in Schiano, as has been rumored in some circles, it would also help him fill out the rest of his staff, because Schiano has his own network of coaches, that he can sort of bring with him, or some coaches that might come with him if that goes as proceeds there. So no doubt, these guys have been in the system. They know, they sort of speak like Belichick. You talk to some assistant coaches that come in, they say it's almost like, they know the Belichick language. And so when you lose that, you sort of have to reboot. And maybe that can re-energize them in a little bit as they move forward.
So we're talking about coaching staffs here. How about players? I mean, Brady, I know he was asked and he said, listen, it's 15 minutes after the game. I don't think anybody believes he's not coming back. Gronk was an interesting one, as far as asked about his future. And for as fun-loving as Gronk is, that was one of the more serious answers I think he gave. Do you think there is any reason to believe he may not be back next year?
Mike, I'm going to give you my read on that. When I heard that, my first thought is, he's under contract for 2 more years. He's due to make $8 million in base salary for 2018, and he's due to make $9 million in salary for 2019. And when I heard that, my first thought was maybe that's the first sort of statement to say, hey, maybe that contract needs to be addressed here. First team All-Pro, feeling a little bit undervalued, and maybe that's making me not want to, run back here and play in 2018. So a lot of raw emotion right after the Super Bowl. I would be surprised if Gronkowski isn't back, but maybe that was a subtle sort of hint from him to the team to say, we might have to have a discussion here about that contract, before we're coming back here in 2018.
So you think it's more financial related than actually thinking about walking away?
That was my thought, and it's just speculation. I feel like he's at the top of his game. To walk away at the top of his game, and he seems to be having a great time with it. And he embraced being a captain here with the Patriots. So that would be my first thought. But again, just more of a feeling from being around him than anything I would know for sure.
Mike Reiss is with us, our Patriots reporter. Mike, the only thing that would give me a little pause about that is I don't know if you saw the entire exchange. When someone first asked him about it, his response was, well, how did you hear about that? In other words, clearly this was something that he had been discussing with someone that he believed was close to him or in confidence, and he was kind of surprised that the idea of him thinking about retirement got out there.
Yep, and I did see that, and that's very fair, and so it's not something I would dismiss out of hand. At the same time, Trey, I'm sitting there thinking it's literally right after the Super Bowl. They've been through the grind for 8 months, and it almost felt like it was pushing fast forward here. Give them a little time. Sometimes your emotions are high after a game like that. So we'll definitely keep an eye on it. But that was my first thought when I heard it.
Yeah, it was just interesting the way he answered the question as opposed to Tom, who said, "Yeah, look, it's 15 minutes after the game, but absolutely, I'm coming back. There's no reason to believe that I won't." Just the whole semantics and the way their body language, everything was completely different about those two answers. Mike, it's never an off season for you, so you have some off season homework to do, and we always look forward to hearing your reports. And thanks for being with us this morning.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night. No doubt about it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The Hall of Fame announcement, which came Saturday, and the Hall of Fame class this year had a lot of winning moments. And it's brought to you by La Quinta Inns and Suites. Book at LQ.com and win at business. I think it's very cool the way they do the Hall of Fame. They basically tell you if you're a finalist, be in your room between these hours. And if you get a phone call, that means you're not in the hall. But if someone knocks on your door, that means you're in. So it's got to be one of the most tense times ever to be sitting in there during that 4-hour window and saying, okay, can you imagine if room service knocks?
Tense times? Listen, and for a football player, it's the complete opposite. I heard Mike talking about it this morning. The complete opposite. You get a knock on the door. Normally, that means bring your playbook.
Yep,
you're
exactly.
cut. Now you're waiting for the knock on the door, and you hear the knock on the door. Usually, if you hear nothing for a football player, that means you're safe.
Yeah.
You hear nothing in this. Obviously, it means you didn't make the Hall of Fame. So complete opposite. But at least you know obviously what it is going in, and you're just waiting for the large human being in David Baker to knock on the door.
He is.
Oh, he is
enormous.
And I dealt with him a lot when I was doing arena football.
Me too.
He was running the arena league, but now running the Hall of Fame, and gets that. What a great honor that has to be to go tell these men that they're in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It is very, very cool.
It certainly is. And I would just, if that was ever up to me, I would like, nobody call me. Okay, I don't want any of my friends calling.
I'm sure it's all laid out there. Yeah,
nobody call me. I only want to get one call, and I don't want to think it's what it is if it isn't.
You don't want to get the call, quite honestly. You want to get the knock.
Correct. So here's the entire 2018 Hall of Fame class. Ray Lewis, Randy Moss, Brian Urlacher, Terrell Owens, Brian Dawkins, Bobby Beathard as a contributor, the longtime personnel guy with Washington, San Diego, everywhere. And the senior committee nominees, Jerry Kramer and Robert Brazil.
Robert Brazil's last year, by the way, was my first year with the Houston Oilers.
He talk about also huge.
Yeah.
Brazil, still huge. Yeah. By the way, the great thing about Robert Brazil, and we'll get to the other members of the class, he was picked out of Jackson State.
Yep.
In that same draft, 2 picks before Robert Brazil, Walter Payton was picked out of Jackson State. I looked it up. The year that they were selected, Jackson State lost 3 games. How in the heck did they lose 3 games when they had those two guys drafted within 2 picks of each other into the Hall of Fame. But I think a lot of us thought Ray Lewis was getting in. Randy Moss was getting in the first time. Maybe Brian Urlacher was getting in the first ballot.
I didn't think 2 linebackers would go in.
I didn't either.
So I thought Ray Lewis would get in over Brian, and I didn't think the way the wide receivers are in queue at times and had to wait when we were going through some of the wide receivers we went through. I thought no way 2 were going to get in, and I thought Moss would go in before T.O. Of course, all the people I just mentioned, every one of them deserving to be in the Hall. T.O. should have already been in the Hall of Fame as far as I'm concerned. But they both go in. So, man, I think the position that got left, and Brian Dawkins, I mean, is there a better entrance coming out onto a field than Brian Dawkins when he's on all fours coming out? Just the aggressive, big hitting player that he was. It's incredible, fun to watch play. But then and then Jerry Kramer, what a great to be able to get that knock. And as you mentioned, the others from the Veterans Committee as well. But the O-line was really not represented at all. And you had the Steve Hutchinson, Alan Faneca, Tony Baselli still waiting to get into the Hall of Fame, which I think all of us believe he should get in the Hall of Fame. The O-line completely shut out of this class.
Yeah, I was really surprised that Baselli didn't get in.
Yeah, me too.
This is a guy who's waited a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And look, he was as dominant as an offensive
without
lineman
question.
Now he had the shoulder injuries, which may have shortened his career. But
We've seen shortened careers. Terrell Davis, Gale Sayers
Absolutely.
Go back there. We have seen shortened careers, and this guy was the dominant, left tackle in the league for a number of years, and certainly the longevity, the more you have there, the better off you're going to be. But I still think it's a matter of time before he's in there. But I was surprised, none of those offensive linemen that I mentioned got in the Hall.
Well, yeah, Jerry Kramer obviously went to the Veterans Committee. I was happy for him. I was like, what took forever?
Boy, you're not
Jerry
kidding
Kramer
there.
to get in.
That's the truth.
I mean, just talk to anybody that played with him, and you can even go look at the old NFL film stuff. He was a dominant guard on those Green Bay Packers teams. But I think a lot of people felt like an injustice that had been done because of nothing to do with football, really, was fixed on Saturday. And that's with Terrell Owens getting the Hall of Fame.
Without a doubt.
Look, we all get it. He's annoying. He can be a jerk. He can be all of those things.
Yep.
You know what the Hall of Fame is filled with? Annoying jerks.
I was going to say, you want to start doing personality checks on any Hall of Fame. Yeah, then it's like, how hot dogs are made. Be careful of what you want to find out.
Correct.
About people. So, I mean, give me a break. The Hall of Fame, and there may be no one here I respect more than Bill Polian, and I disagree with his thought on this, him talking about, that you're supposed to help a team. And I get you're supposed to be a great teammate and help a team, but him not thinking T.O. should be in the Hall of Fame because of the locker room stuff. I just disagree with that. He is one of the greatest wide receivers to play the game on the field. He should be in the Hall of Fame. As I said, let's not character check everybody or you're going to be highly disappointed in a lot of people. But the Hall of Fame is for the great ones who played the game, and he should have been in already. And I'm glad, but the voters, trying to prove their little points every now and then. When you want to talk about something that makes me sick, that's something that does it in all the sports there. But that you're right, a wrong was righted there, and now he and Moss going in together. That along with Urlacher and Lewis going in together. That's what a position to represent those two.
Well, it's going to be one of the greatest classes.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to this when we do the Hall of Fame in August. But Bill Polian will be on the show tomorrow. You guys can talk about that.
Yeah.
But see, like in baseball, it's different. Baseball, there's all this language about what it means to be a Hall of Famer. In the Pro Football Hall of Fame, there's none of that language. It's about were you a dominant player on the field. Now, I've heard people like Bill and other people say, well, because, a couple of teams dropped him and he was disruptive, that can lead into how you affect the team. And I get that.
Yeah, yeah. I understand what Bill was saying. I'm not saying I don't get what he's saying. I completely understand. But the bottom line is, to me, his performance on the field was Hall of Fame worthy.
Second most receiving yards in NFL history. Third most receiving touchdowns in NFL history. 9 1,000-yard seasons over an 11-year span. Set the then record for catches in a single game with 20 against the Bears. By the way, the interesting thing about that was on the day that they retired Jerry Rice. It was his last game. And T.O. just upstaged him.
Yep.
He just said, yeah, that's great. It's your day and everything, but I'm taking it. Look, T.O. is abrasive. T.O. loves him some him.
Yes, he does.
As he said, there's no doubt in my mind that Terrell Owens, with what he did on the field, was a Hall of Famer.
No,
none whatsoever.
None.
You can have all these other little issues you want to deal with. And was it kind of jerky? Yeah, the sit-ups in the parking lot, the fight with Donovan McNabb, all of that stuff. But you know what? He played the Super Bowl on a broken leg, and he might have been the best damn player on the field.
Yeah, that's what I go on. It's not my job, and to me, it's not the voters' job to decide what personality you like or dislike on what a person does. It's about, are they Hall of Fame worthy for what they did on the field? And he is. All the guys that went in are, without question. It is an excellent class from those two positions represented, wide receiver and linebacker, to Brian Dawkins, who, again, he was gonna lay the wood to you, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I was really happy Doc got in.
Yep.
But let's be clear when we talk about T.O. All the things we talk about T.O., he was abrasive. He was let go by a couple of teams. He had some issues. You could make every one of those arguments for Randy Moss.
Randy Moss, exactly right.
Straight cash homie. He walked off the field. Walked off the field once while the game was still going. Right. One of the things I'll always remember is when he was with the Raiders and they were having a bad game in Seattle, sitting on the bench, completely checked out.
Yep.
So if you have these issues with T.O., you better have him with Randy Moss as well. You can't have him for one and not for the other.
Completely agree.
There's no doubt in my mind Randy Moss was a Hall of Famer.
And both these guys are right where they should be. These two should be putting on gold jackets along with the other guys.
And they will be putting them in together, which was the surprise.
Yeah.
I think both you and I thought,
without question,
Lewis would go in alone and then we'll get in Urlacher later. Moss will go in alone, we'll get in Owens later, but they both go in together. It's going to make for one hell of a Saturday night in Canton, Ohio.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
It was all sort of one big giant Jell-O mold.
It's very interesting where that went.
They asked me for some homework.
Yes, they did. Before you go away, you had to do a little homework.
And they asked me for my top 5 storylines in the offseason going into 2018 in the NFL.
Okay.
So they dressed this up for television, so we're going to start. We have a big fancy thing here.
All right, good.
Trey's top 5 off-season storylines.
I love the fact they got you in your laugh.
You do his laugh really well.
I did it better before I was losing my voice, but you're right. All right, here is number 5.
Who exactly is Dak Prescott?
Only God knows, really.
And I think that's a big question
for
the
Dallas
Dallas Cowboys.
Question, yeah.
Look, obviously Dak was hurt a little bit by the loss of Zeke Elliott for 6 games. But if you look at the numbers, his rookie year, when he lit the world on fire and they were the number 1 seed, he had 23 touchdown passes against only 4 interceptions. This year he had 22 touchdown passes, 13 interceptions, Mike.
Right.
His yards per attempt went down from almost 8 per attempt to under 7. His completion percentage dipped from 68% to 63%. And I think a big part of this is, can they figure out what Dak does well and they can put the pieces in place around him?
Yeah, and the O-line was not what it was this year.
No, it wasn't.
As opposed to last year's, with Tyron Smith being hurt a lot at left tackle, you left guard, you playing a little bit of musical chairs for Jonathan Cooper, kind of took that spot over, but it was a position they had to fill. L. Collins, who was there last year, was out at right tackle, learning that position. So they went through a little bit of transition as well. So we'll see. We'll see where they go for in free agency in the draft. Did they get a speedy receiver? They still got work to do on defense as well, because the teams at running back and quarterback, they're obviously set. A lot of talk on Dez Bryant. I don't think Dez is going anywhere, but you have to wonder, do they pick up that fast and that speedy type receiver?
Well, Dez hasn't been that guy since 2014. Now, some of that's injuries, but you know what? When you play as physical as Dez does, those injuries tend to mount up pretty quickly.
Yep.
In 2014, he had 16 touchdown receptions, including one that should have counted in the playoffs but didn't, against the Packers in that divisional round game. But he hasn't been that guy in a couple of years. The Cowboys have to get faster Terrence Williams is not a fast receiver.
No.
Cole Beasley's not a fast receiver. They need more team speed, but they've got to figure out what Dak does well and build around him, because they made that commitment.
Yeah, they did.
As soon as they said, hey, we're in with Dak all the way, and that's why Tony Romo's in the booth now, as opposed to playing for the Dallas Cowboys. They need to figure out what Dak does well, work around him, and develop him into being the best quarterback he can be, because he took a little bit of a sophomore slump. They can't have him taking a third-year slump as well. He's got to be better, and they've got to get better around him. Because the Cowboys over the last 5 years, Mike, are the only number 1 seed not to make it to the Super Bowl. 9 out of the 10 number 1 seeds the last 5 seasons have made it to the Super Bowl. The Cowboys were the only one that didn't, and they didn't win a single game when they had home field advantage in the NFC. So that was storyline number 5. Here is storyline number 4.
Of the 8 new playoff teams, how many are here to stay and how many were flashes in the pan?
There's people that think LeBron James sucks.
And look, you had the Jacksonville Jaguars make it. You had the Buffalo Bills make it.
Right.
The Rams made it. So you had all these. Now the Saints are a different story because they have Drew Brees and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
Maybe they would have a 3-year absence. But we had 8 playoff teams make the postseason in 2017 that weren't there in 2016. Normally we get 5 or 4 in and out every year. So which one of these teams, of these 8 that made it back in, do we believe can be there for the long haul? I mean, for crying out loud, the Super Bowl champs, the Eagles were one of those teams.
Yeah, I think Jacksonville could be one of those. Don't you? I mean,
I do.
We'll see what goes on with the quarterback position now. Yeah. Now with the whole Blake Bortles having the surgery and he's going to get that $19 million guaranteed. What direction do they go? But I love how they're building and have built so far. And in that division, now you're going to get Andrew Luck back, so we'll see. But Andrew Luck, while he has struggled, he's had 0 around him.
Nothing.
And I don't know how quickly they can rebuild with that around him. So I think Jacksonville is a team that can stay. How about another? It's amazing. The 2 of the team, Jacksonville gets all the way to the AFC Championship game and all the way to the NFC Championship game is Minnesota.
Yeah.
And they have the quarterback situation. What's going to happen there? Is Blake Bortles going to be the guy in Jacksonville? What happens in Minnesota? Is it going to be Case Keenum, Sam Bradford, which I don't think so, or Teddy Bridgewater they give the deal to? So those teams that we talk about have their situations at the quarterback position.
Number 1 defense in the NFL last year for the Vikings, and all 3 of their quarterbacks on expiring contracts, which is just so rare for a team that is good. Normally you have that situation when you want to reboot. There was a while, Arizona doesn't have a quarterback on their roster right now. There was a time when San Francisco didn't have a quarterback under contract last offseason on their roster. So usually when you look at a situation like that, it's for a team that struggled.
Right.
Minnesota did not struggle. They were a number 2 seed.
A team that I think could be there for a bit. It might too be the makeup of the division. Seattle, their influx, right, with some of the defensive players, whether they're going to have back or not. Arizona Cardinals, they got to start over with a quarterback and such. They're going to be losing Larry Fitzgerald, whether it's now or in another year. And the San Francisco 49ers, I think, are on the way up.
Yep.
But how long will that take? So the Rams. I think the Rams with Goff, that O-line they rebuilt, the defense led by the defensive player of the year. By the way, your offensive player of the year
Todd
Gurley,
and your coach of the year.
And your coach of the year as well. I think that's a team that's built to hang around for a bit.
So again, we'll see how many of these can go. I'm with you. I like the Rams and I like Jacksonville. There's Buffalo, but they've got issues at quarterback. And that leads me to offseason story number 3.
From free agency to trades to the draft class, the QB carousel goes round and round.
You like that?
It's going to be fascinating, Mike. We've never had an NFL offseason with so many quarterback questions and so many available that we believe are pretty talented at the quarterback position.
Well, you look at the draft, and, Cleveland needs a quarterback. The Giants will probably take one, but I'll get to touch on it in a second. Cleveland has the 1st and 4th pick. Denver looking for a quarterback. The Jets looking for a quarterback as well. So you look at the top 6 teams, and you're talking, 3 of those teams need a quarterback. So what happens in free agency first and or trades first before we even get to the draft? We'll get to Todd McShay's mock draft on who he has going number 1. Shock of all shocks, it's a quarterback. But that could all change if all of a sudden Cleveland, John Dorsey does not like, Joe Thomas sat in here and said, John Dorsey, the new GM, does not like playing rookie quarterbacks.
And they have a ton of money.
What veteran do they bring in? They tried to trade for Alex Smith.
Yep.
But Washington had the better deal by throwing in the player they did in the cornerback. So where do they go as far as, and even if they get a veteran, do they still draft one of these rookies to kind of prepare along the way? So free agency takes hold first in this, so that could change up the top of this draft.
Look, potentially we have 5 quarterbacks that could go in the first round of the draft, but where they go will be completely determined by what happens. The only thing we do know that it's done, but it's not done because it can't be done until March, is that Alex Smith is leaving Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes will take over. He's going to Washington. There's a story out there that Washington may try and put the franchise tag on Kirk Cousins one more time just to F with him more than anything else, but also to protect what they might get back in return.
Get back for him. It's exactly right.
But by God, if you're not going to pay him, let him go.
Well, that's the thing.
And you just brought in the guy that's going to replace him.
So is Cousins going to one of those teams? Cleveland or Denver or New York, possibly. So, I mean, that's going to change the whole top of this draft if and when some of that happens.
And the other thing, too, is that some people still believe, even though Blake Bortles' wrist surgery pretty much guarantees his $19 million deal, hey, Mike Glennon's now a backup in Chicago.
For $16 million or whatever it is. Yeah.
So it's workable.
Yep.
It's workable. So Jacksonville may still be in play. NBA free agency is bananas every offseason.
Yeah.
This is going to be the closest thing to that because of the quarterbacks that are in play in the NFL's offseason. And now we get into offseason story number 2.
Is this the beginning of the end in New England?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, listen, the bottom line is it starts with the quarterback who, as we've talked about through this domination with the quarterback and the coach, name the Hall of Famers he's played with.
Randy Moss. And maybe somebody else.
I'm going to say Gronk.
Ty Law.
Gronk.
Ty Law probably get in.
But it's not, you can't start listing them off. You can list off the first couple and then that's it. So what he's done, and in my eyes, he's got 2 more years, if that. So, yeah, I mean, it depends on what your definition of the beginning of the end. Next year, no, I think Belichick's back. I think Brady's back. I think Gronk is back. So they're going to replace their coordinators and possibly some position coaches as well. And we know the last time that happened, it was a 10-year span before they won
another Super Bowl.
Before they won another Super Bowl.
They went
correct.
to 2.
They did so.
42 and 46.
It's still pretty nice. You still went there. So it depends on your definition of, is it the beginning of the end? I still think there's a couple of more years where this team can do something. By couple more years, I mean as Brady's a quarterback.
Brady, to me, is the key because at some point, Mike, it's happening.
Oh, it's exactly right.
At some point, Father Time wins. That's the whole point of his documentary, Tom versus Time. He's the oldest quarterback to start in a Super Bowl. He's the oldest quarterback to set all kinds of records, but he will be 41. He'll be 41 in August. It's going to end. It catches up with everybody.
It will.
The question is, because he's not going to get better at 41. The question is, how long can he maintain? And he was the MVP. So if you can maintain that level for 2 more years, God bless you. That's great. But at some point, the decline is coming, and you have to wonder, will it be this next season? Or like you said, maybe 2 more years at 42, 43. Right. It's insane that we're even having this discussion.
It is. I agree.
He is rewriting the record book on so many levels. And that leads me to off-season story number 1.
Can the Eagles repeat?
Free Meek Mill.
Free Meek Mill. And when I say repeat, I don't even mean as Super Bowl champs. I mean as division champs.
Right.
Okay? Say what you want about the NFC East, but the only constant there is change. The last team to repeat as champs in the NFC East, you know what it is?
Who's that?
The Philadelphia Eagles, 2003 to 2004. Every year since 2005, a different team has gone on to win that division.
Who has the best shot to dethrone them?
I would probably say Dallas.
Yeah.
Because, the Giants, they got a lot of issues they got to work out. Washington is in sort of a reboot mode. Now, we'll see what Alex Smith can do if he plays like he did in Kansas City. I think you feel pretty good about that. If Sean Lee is healthy and can stay on the field,
which has been an if.
A huge if for them. The defense is good enough. And if you get the right weapons around Dak, and Zeke is there for 16 games.
My money is still on Philly, not only winning the division, but even getting back to the Super Bowl. Now, let's see when Carson Wentz comes back. He should be able to start to work in training camp. Would he be ready for game 1? If he's not, will Nick Foles still be there, or will Philadelphia be offered a king's ransom for him and take that? If Nick's there, then he can just fill the void until Carson is back. And we know they have most of their guys, 21 to 22 guys are under contract. So it's tough to, outside of some injury, but they had it this year. They lost one of the best tackles in the game, one of the best quarterbacks in the game, best special teamer in the game. I mean, my God. And they still ended up in the Super Bowl. So yeah, I'd say their chances can be pretty good, even though it's very hard to do.
This is why Howie Roseman won Executive of the Year. 21 of those 22 starters are locked in. Only Nigel Bradham is not locked and under contract for next season. Now, there may be some other issues going on there, but they have depth. They got guys coming back. And I believe that Nick Foles isn't going anywhere for 2 reasons. One, we won't know until the summer where we are with Carson Wentz and his recovery, and you have the perfect guy to just stay in there and right the ship and win games for you. And their quarterback number combined against the cap is under 15 million. There are 18 starters in the league that have, or not even 18 starters, or 18 quarterbacks in the league that have a higher cap number than those two combined. It is an unbelievable luxury, and quite frankly, one they may need because they won't know until later on, well after free agency starts, where they are with Carson Wentz.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
Let's not expect too much. There's only one person out there that's expecting way too much out of this guy too early. We know who that is. It's his father.
You've got Todd. ESPN NFL Draft expert Todd McShay joins us in studio, giving the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. So it sounds about right, Todd. We're 2 days after the Super Bowl. We are on to the draft. We are on to the draft. We are moving on.
Not all of us are on to Hawaii. So
yeah, isn't that the truth?
Come on, hop on.
Yeah.
Plenty of room.
Yeah.
Have fun with this guy all day.
Big plane. Big plane, Todd. Big plane.
Almost done with him.
Yeah, literally on so many levels.
Yeah,
You're almost done with
there
me.
you go. Yeah.
It's been a good run. We had a couple of good months.
Yeah, we did.
So this is mock number 1?
2.
Well,
Yeah,
that's right.
2.
You had the first one right after the season.
Yeah.
How many are we going to do this year?
I don't know.
I will say, I know you hate doing all the ones, but boy, this year, I think I sit there more than any. I try and think back. The quarterback situation from trading to free agency is really going to mess with the top of your draft. There's no doubt about it.
For once, we're going to need to do.
That's exactly right. That more my point. So for those that don't know, because it just was released, Todd McShay's draft has the Browns taking Sam Darnold number 1. I'll do the top 5 right now. The Giants at number 2 taking Josh Rosen, the quarterback from UCLA. The Colts at number 3 taking Bradley Chubb, the pass rusher out of North Carolina State. Then the Browns get another pick, number 4, Saquon Barkley, the running back out of Penn State. And here's the one that's going to get all kind of talk.
Here we go.
The Broncos at number 5, Baker Mayfield from Oklahoma. So first, I guess we should start at 1. Why Sam Darnold over Josh Allen, over Josh Rosen, over Baker Mayfield? That's number 1.
It's a tough call. It is, because you can make an argument for and against, I think, all of these guys. You know, with Josh Rosen, I think he's the best pure passer in the class. I think you got to investigate who he is and what his priorities are and go from there. There are questions about him, and the mobility is a factor as well, lack thereof, and being under pressure and making some mistakes when under pressure because he's not able to escape like these other 3 quarterbacks are. Baker Mayfield, obviously 46 starts, experienced, leadership, the energy that he brings. The lack of size doesn't concern me as much as some other people, but it certainly factors in. And then we just got to figure out how he's going to handle all the attention. And you know, he certainly likes to have the circus around him,
right?
So
he does.
So where he lands will be important. To me, that's that pick. And I'm skipping forward here, but the Broncos sitting at 5. If Allen and Mayfield are both on the board at that point, that'll be really interesting because John Elway and the staff coached both of those quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl. Elway was at the College Bowl game for Josh Allen against Central Michigan, and so he's clearly doing his digging on those, as you will with all of these guys. But having the personal time that staff had with those players, and also if they decide to go out and get a veteran and say, you know what, from our experience that week with these guys, maybe they're not going to be the guy. And maybe we're not as sold as we wanted to be going into that process. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of that.
Here's the question I have, because this all, as we know, may change depending on what happens in free agency.
Right, exactly.
So let's start with Cleveland, because we had Joe Thomas on this show and on NFL Live last week, and he said John Dorsey, the new GM, doesn't like playing a rookie quarterback. So let's assume that they get a veteran. If they get that veteran, where does Cleveland go at number 1?
Well, if they get a veteran
Barkley
that they plan on sticking with and being the guy for a long period of time, then I think it would be Saquon Barkley. I think he's the best player in this draft. But if they get a bridge the gap veteran, then I still think you go with the quarterback there and hope Barkley's there at 4. But if not, you're getting Bradley Chubb, another pass rusher which they could use, or a Minkah Fitzpatrick, which is a versatile defensive back that can do a lot of different things for you. So either way, I don't think the Browns. It can go wrong, but
you were just about to say either way they can't go wrong, and then you realized the team you were talking about.
Right, but John Dorsey's here now, and hopefully for the Browns fans, things will start to turn around and be different moving forward. But they have good options sitting there at 1 and 4. It's not like they're in a situation where they're stuck at 3 and there's 2 quarterbacks, or there's no other player that fits a hole that they need.
Right,
they're in a good position to have a big time haul from this draft.
They absolutely are.
And just hope that it's not history repeating itself.
Well, the problem for them is if they do choose a quarterback, now it's going to be okay from everybody's kind of looking at it. We have a 1 in 4 shot here, and they're going to choose a quarterback, and the natural assumption is they're going to choose the wrong one when they see this go on, because I should mention in the 6th pick, you have the 4th quarterback going in the top 6 pick, and you have Josh Allen going to the Jets. Again, a name we don't see, and we were talking about just a couple other names, and maybe they'd sneak into the back of the first half of or back of the first round if there's a trade up. A Mason Rudolph, a Lamar
right.
Jackson, those two guys.
Yeah, and talking to more guys in the league down in the Senior Bowl, I think there's a legitimate chance Lamar Jackson could go late in the first, as whatever that team decides, to draft him for.
Right.
And
he's going to be a quarterback at first.
Listen,
don't you think?
Here's what 9 out of 10 people were saying, and personally, I agree with it. I think you draft him because he's been the most explosive player in college football the last 2 years with the ball in his hand, and then you figure it out. But what's going to be interesting to see is how willing he is to go in the league, and I think most teams I talk to, as I said, are looking at him as a package player, if you will. So we're going to use him on some third downs. We're going to use him in the red zone, goal line situations, but then also try to get some value out of him just getting the ball in his hands. Somehow, some way, some shape.
Why would he not be, considering he was a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback?
Because he has a lot of work to do on his accuracy, and he has a lot
Josh Allen is at 56% over 2 years in his career.
I understand.
It just seems weird that we're saying, he may be a quarterback, he may not be, when he's been a very successful quarterback.
And I think you're going to draft him to try to develop him as a quarterback, but if it doesn't work out, he's too explosive not to have him on the field.
So there's a plan B, is what you're saying.
That's what I believe.
I would completely agree. You take him and you put him in packages, and if it doesn't work out there, you morph him into something else. The problem with him, Trey, is he runs so much. Yeah. He's going to have to stop doing that because he's getting broken in half. He will not survive running that much in the NFL.
There's no question. We see that from all the even Mariota has got to stop running as much as he has because it's gotten him in trouble a couple of times. All right, let's play the same game with the Broncos that we did with the Browns at number one. Denver, they got a defense that's ready to win now, and I don't know if you can get a rookie in Baker who's a little undersized, who's going to sit pretty well in that locker room. Let's say they get Kirk Cousins, or they find somebody else on the open market that they're able to land. How does that change what Denver does at 5?
I think then if you're at 5, you got two options. Obviously, you see who's available. Is it another defensive player? Is it a Bradley Chubb or a Minkah Fitzpatrick? I don't know that you're going to go Calvin Ridley that high, but I think the good spot you are in if you address the quarterback position is you got the Jets sitting behind you. And then any other team like the Dolphins sitting at 11 that is looking for a quarterback, if there's one or more quarterbacks still available, then maybe you get to move back a little bit and get some additional picks and continue to try to build that offensive line. I think that's got to be a priority for the Broncos at some point in this draft. And, they used a pick early last year. They've got to continue to do that and continue to build that group because it doesn't matter who they bring in at quarterback. If they can't protect better, they're just not going to turn the corner.
The rest of the top 10, I went to 6 with Josh Allen. You have Minkah Fitzpatrick, the defensive player from Alabama, defensive back going to the Tampa Bay. Calvin Ridley going to the Bears. Hopefully they can get a wide receiver that can stay healthy. And then 9 and 10, they saw the coin flip, right, at the Combine. Right now you have the 49ers taking a quarterback, Denzel Ward, Ohio State. Number 10, the Raiders. Tremaine Edmonds, the pass rusher, outside linebacker, DN from Virginia Tech. Quickly from the Broncos, is 5 too high if they get that quarterback because the line, I agree. Quentin Nelson is the top O lineman, but he's an interior lineman. You know how that thought process is sometimes from an interior lineman. But you want to talk about the ultimate plug-and player and just go in and help a line get better right away.
I couldn't agree more. I would argue that it's an easy argument to make. He's one of the 5 best players in this draft. I've talked to 2 different personnel directors, general managers in the last couple of weeks who said outside of Barkley, he's the best player in this draft. And so
Quentin Nelson,
he's a guard. He's going to go.
He throws people.
He's
his
ridiculous.
He probably has the best tape of anybody in the entire draft.
That is true.
He manhandles.
If you can guarantee, I know it's a guard, but if you can guarantee me you're going to get a Pro Bowl player and that he's going to be safe and you know what he is, his makeup, I don't have a problem taking a guard.
What's interesting, you have him going 11 to the Dolphins. I go back to the draft that had Zach Martin in it from Notre Dame as well, coached by Harry Hiestand. But all those guys drafted Greg Robinson, Taylor Lewan. It was Matthews, Jake Matthews, and Zeke and Zach Martin were all tackles.
Yes,
and Lewan ended up at left tackle.
Right.
Greg Robinson ended up out of the league. He just didn't pan out at all. Matthews ended up at the left tackle. He started out at right. And Zach Martin is one of the best guards in the game. So
about to get paid.
He is about to get paid. So what's the deepest position to you in this draft?
Well, quarterback, first of all, is deeper than normal, I would say. But running back, and it's not reflected in this, but we all talk about Saquon Barkley. There are so many running backs in the second, third, fourth round this year. Ronald Jones, the third from USC, is explosive. Darius Geist didn't have a huge year, but Leonard Fournette's backup a year ago. Wait till he works out. It's going to be his stock is going to hit north fast. All the way down to like Rashad Penny from San Diego State. This class, I think you're going to see somewhere in the range of 10 running backs in the second and third rounds. And I think, you're not fired up to use an early, this high of a pick on a running back, but Saquon Barkley's got a chance to be.
We've seen, Todd Gurley. We've seen these guys come in. Zeke.
Exactly.
It's really weird how the running back has come back in vogue after really good picks suddenly pan out.
There's 2 years where we didn't have a first round pick, and all of a sudden, the running back position's dead.
All right. You mentioned and what Geis is going to do in his workouts. Someone who's already gone this week.
You mentally?
Yeah. Well, I'm checked out. No, but this guy at the Senior Bowl. And you have him right now going 14 to the Packers, and that's Marcus Davenport.
Yes.
Is he the ultimate boom bust guy in this first round?
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. He certainly is. He's a guy who, almost like Ziggy Ansah, very different background and story, but just wasn't heavily recruited, winds up at Texas San Antonio. I popped in the first tape I watched Baylor, and he's just all over the field. Yeah. And they've upset Baylor, as you well know. Pretty held him to 10 points at Baylor. He is so talented, but he's just scratching the surface right now in terms of what he can be. Ziggy Ansah, I think, is a very good comparison physically because of the length and the power and the quickness, but he's going to have to continue to develop. It's probably going to be a year or two before you get him to a peak level.
The guy in the first round that makes you go wow the most.
Wow, by wow you mean like
wow? I can't wait to see this guy play.
I think Denzel Ward is a player that no one really talks about. I think because at cornerback at Ohio State, you're sitting behind some pretty good players, and
played pretty well this year in the league.
But he might be Marshawn Lattimore. He's right up there in terms of just explosive athletes. I think this guy is going to be a really good pro. And if you're looking for someone just man-to-man coverage, he's the best in the group.
Boy, he ends up with the 49ers. That'd be something, the team they're building out there.
Right.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what Derwin James is at the next level, because he had a disappointing senior year, but he played every position on that defense.
Right.
From putting his hand in the dirt to playing safety.
And that can hurt you, though, at times, right? With jack of all trades, master of none?
Yeah, but I think
Jabril Peppers kind of situation.
Yeah, Jabril Peppers, but I think he's a player that, remember, he came off the injury from a year before. The team fell apart. It was not a good situation. But you go back to his first year, he is a special player. That he's explosive versus the run, and he can cover too. I think he and Minkah Fitzpatrick are two players that fit today's NFL really well.
All right, Todd, we'll see what happens. This will be the second of 743 drafts.
Yes, it will.
That you'll do before the end of the month of April, when we'll be out there in Dallas. We'll all be there. Appreciate you stopping by, my friend.
Thanks, man. Aloha.
This has been the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast. Make sure to subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, and to listen every weekday morning at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPN2, and the ESPN app.